My guest today created the storyline for ROBOTECH. He's producer of ROBOTECH, the television series, and director and writer of ROBOTECH, the movie, which you don't know anything about yet, but will in a very short period of time. Let me introduce to you Carl Macek, who does all of these things for ROBOTECH. And Carl, welcome to the show.
Hi.
ROBOTECH is very, very unusual. It's not your standard cartoon fare as we know it today. How did you get involved in it?
Well, Harmony Gold is the company that initially instigated the ROBOTECH concept, and they hired me to see if I could do something a little bit different for television syndication. They wanted a program that would be completely unlike anything that had been on television for animation in the past, and with those rules and with the help of a lot of people at Harmony Gold and in Japan, we came up with ROBOTECH.
The difference in ROBOTECH and most other, if not indeed all other, cartoon series is really worldwide. You know, there's just a great gap between them. What are the major differences, though? The things that you and I would probably immediately say, hey, that's different.
ROBOTECH, for example, deals with genuine emotional storyline. Content that is atypical of cartoons. You have characters that meet and fall in love and have children and basically grow up on television in a dramatic setting as opposed to a situation comedy setting. You have a genuine use of dramatic storylines that are like science fiction as opposed to juvenile fantasy. There are 30 or 40 main characters that interact like a soap opera, like Dallas or...
I was going to mention, you once referred to ROBOTECH as the Dallas of the space age.
Yeah, it's a good comparison because it is a saga that covers families and their relationships to power and the whole substructure of what makes soap opera function. And it wasn't actually me that said that, it was like people describing it, and I've since had to agree with them that it is an animated, quote-unquote, Dallas.
Is it done in serial form? That's the sense that I get. Is the episode, each episode, does it build on the previous episode?
Oh, absolutely. It's a continuing story, so that if you sit down and start watching episode 1 of ROBOTECH, by the time you've watched the 85 episodes that have been produced as of this time, you would have a continuous story, 42 and a half hours worth of storytelling that deal with 3 generations of Earth families trying to save their planet from alien domination. And it all interrelates, and everybody has a history, which is very unique.
You said there are 40-some-odd characters. Are there central characters that you can almost count on being in every episode?
For each generation that you deal with, yeah, there's probably a handful, let's say 6 that you can identify with, both male and female characters, both good guys and bad guys, so that there's a good mix, and you can see people develop and you can see people learn about their environment, both you know, interpersonal relationships and the big picture, you know, the cosmic picture.
One of the things that really sets ROBOTECH apart from your average cartoon is your target audience. Who are you aiming at?
Well, we have a philosophy at Harmony Gold which deals with trying to elevate the level of animation content, so that we're shooting for a young teenager with the understanding that you can always have information filtered down to the younger brother or the younger child that is in the viewing audience. But if you can force someone to reach up to your concepts, we think it's much more effective than having stuff splash you know, into somebody's mind. I mean, it's a process of trying to teach people something different.
Do you have any idea what the demographics on the show are?
I find that the demographics are fairly heavy from, let's say, 10 to 20, you know, in that range, so that as opposed to most cartoons where they have a heavy, you know, juvenile base, which would be the 2 to 8 or something like that.
The animation itself, for those of us who grew up watching Walt Disney and Walter Lantz and and folks like that. Is your approach to animation any different than what they do?
The technique
Or
of the technique of animation cannot change. I mean, it is a technique which is universal. You paint on a transparent piece of acetate, and you put that on a background and you photograph it. That technique has been the
The
same.
overlay technique
Yes,
is going to remain.
absolutely. But what is different about what we do is the directorial style that we utilize to produce the animation. How you position the camera, how you manipulate the cell in the background. That is what I think makes the material unique, because taken as a separate cell, there's no difference between a cell from Robotech and a Disney cell.
You're using that term cell, and most of us who are laymen don't really know what a cell is, but this is
a cell in background. This is the cell. It's a transparent piece of film that is placed over a gouache painted background, which is opaque, and then photographed. And they generally do 12 to 24 of these per second, depending on...
One of the things that you pointed out to me in the pre-interview was the fact that one of the things that one of the many things that sets Robotech apart is the use of color.
Oh, yes. We find that most people don't think about it, but when you look at cartoons, the Smurfs or He-Man or Scooby-Doo or whatever, the color scheme is fairly monochromatic and there's not a lot of color in it. In our particular animation, we strive for maximum use of color per cell. And for example, this particular cell has maybe 15 different color variations on it, which gives it a more realistic point of view. There's shadows and highlights, which you don't see in most cartoons. And I think that gives it a sense of separate uniqueness.
One of the things that Robotech has is the fact that it is animated in Japan. Is there a particular reason why it's being done in Japan?
Well, Japanese animation industry is geared up to produce animation at the speed in which we consume it in the United States. For example, if you have to produce 85 half hours of television, which is what Robotech is, that's a considerable amount of animation. And in order to do that, the only place that is geared up to produce that type of animation is Japan. No other country can accommodate.
So logically, that's where you would go.
Absolutely.
What's new in the way of Robotech?
Well, the newest thing right now is ROBOTECH the movie, which is going to be opening in the Dallas Metroplex area,
Right.
the 25th of July. And it is a unique product because it draws its inspiration from the ROBOTECH series, but it is an all-new story.
It's a different storyline entirely from the 85 that...
It's an untold story. What is
it, again, a continuation, an amplification?
It's an amplification of elements which were hinted at in the ROBOTECH series, but were never fully developed. So what we've done is we've taken an incident and we've placed it 3 days before a particular episode in the ROBOTECH series, and we've turned it into a feature film.
And the world premiere, I believe. This is the world premiere,
oh, yes.
July 25th in the Metroplex. Where will it be?
It'll be in approximately 25 theaters throughout the Metroplex area, as far north as, I think, Denton, Fort Worth, Dallas, Plano, Irving. I don't know all the...
So it literally is going to blanket the Metroplex.
Yeah, it is going to be, you know, fairly represented in the Metroplex area.
What is your role as producer in the movie? You know, we hear that term a lot. What is a producer?
That's a very hard thing to describe. What we do when we produce television is we make sure that all the elements come together correctly. The story makes sense. There's continuity. The man that's going to be painting the cells is doing his work. The music comes together. The recording of the actors happens. The remix takes place. Foley, which is a creation of sound effects. Because when you have a cartoon, I mean, if you make a movie and someone walks into the kitchen and gets himself a glass of water, I mean, that sound is real and it's there and you hear the faucet turning. Well, in a cartoon, if you have someone do that same movement, there's no sound. I mean, it's all on paper, you know, so somebody has to create the sound of someone walking across the room, turning the tap, et cetera, et cetera. So there's all of these little elements that you don't really think about when you're making a cartoon that all have to be integrated.
Well, you put it all together, actually. You're the glue, the kind of...
Sort of. It's not just me. There's a whole organization that I have, that I fall back on, and I have a co-producer, Amado, who handles most of the technical elements of the production, making sure that the concepts that I'm thinking about are translated correctly to film and sound, and then I just try to deal with the creative elements so that I can be free to think about stuff like that.
Why was the Metroplex chosen for the premiere?
Well, for two reasons. One is because we feel at Harmony Gold and at Canon Films is releasing the feature that the Dallas Metroplex area is representative of America in terms of its demographics and its...
Pretty good cross-section.
Yeah, cross-section, exactly. And two, traditionally, Robotech has been well-received in the Dallas area, so it's going to be a treat for the fans in this particular
I'm glad
area.
to hear you say that, because it's carried in the morning. What's, just a second, I've got to consult my notes here, because I know we're carrying it, but I don't know when we're carrying it. We're carrying it
6:30.
weekdays at 6:30 a.m. You knew that.
Yeah.
Why didn't I ask you? I think I will. When is it carried on Channel 11?
It's 6:30 Monday through Friday, I think.
Okay, now we've gone through 85 episodes, or are in the process of going through. Is there something new on the horizon there?
Oh, yeah. There's 65 new episodes of Robotech currently in production right now. It follows the story, and that it's again an amplification of characters that have been created in Robotech, and tells the story of their mission to space to deal with a threat that they perceive as happening. It's the heroes of the first Robotech saga, Rick Hunter and Lisa Hayes, and their family as they try to approach an understanding of intergalactic peace. So it's a real complicated show, but real interesting.
Sounds great. Again, the show is weekdays at 6:30 here on Channel 11. The movie premieres July 25th in a lot of theaters throughout the Metroplex. And our guest today is Carl Macek, who is the producer of Robotech television series and the director and producer of Robotech the movie. And Carl, thank you very much for being with us. We appreciate it. And you're talking about intergalactic peace. That ties in very well with my next guest, who will be talking about the Peace Corps. Stay with us. And thank you, Carl.
Squeeze play on me. Hey, back off! Oh, brother, I better think of something fast. Ah, hope my brakes are good. Yeah! Ah,
While animated films remain popular around the world, most American audiences identify animation with Saturday morning cartoons on TV. But now the makers of Robotech have spent $8 million turning the popular TV series into a feature-length film. According to director Carl Macek, the idea is to provide quality animation that appeals to all age groups.
The Robotech television series was an eye-opener for us. As the producer of that series for Harmony Gold, we began to realize that our Japanese associates that were doing the animation had a great sense of graphic design and an interest for storytelling. When we decided to make this movie, we decided to incorporate their design techniques because they were excellent filmmakers and had an ability and a desire to make things for adults. In Japan, as in the rest of the world, people watch animation all the time. In France, in South America, it's just like going to the movies. You go to see an animated film, and you don't think anything about it. People read comic books in Japan on the way home from work. I mean, graphic entertainment is very special. In the United States, that graphic entertainment has kind of been kiddified.
This week, the film has its world premiere in Dallas, and Macek says if it does well, we should see more animated films from Harmony Gold's crack team in Japan.
The fan base in Dallas-Fort Worth is very positively supportive of Robotech. So we're trying to say thank you to Dallas and the people that enjoy Robotech here, and also to say that Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex is a typical American city, and if it plays in the Metroplex, then it'll play anywhere.
Tom Finn, Channel 11 News.